This video is another engineer task. I am once again looking at Yugoslavian Army mine warfare doctrine. Now, I got this out of Call 98-6, Center for Army Lessons Learned. 98-6 is 1998, 6th edition, or June of that year. That particular edition covered demining operations in the former Yugoslavia. And part of that, they explained some of the more common minefields that were being encountered by the deminers. And they also covered Yugoslavian military doctrine from before the war started. They said that the engineer needed to be aware of this so that potentially it could help them in trying to pattern out how that minefield is laid out when they're going in there trying to locate those mines and remove them from the former battle space so that civilians can reuse that area. Now, these minefields were based off Soviet military doctrine from during the Cold War, but adapted for use by the Yugoslavian military. These minefields were typically placed in front of important installations or to close off high-speed avenues of approach. For those of you that aren't aware of it, Yugoslavian territory, or the former Yugoslavian territory, is very mountainous. There's a lot of hills, a lot of forests, and the areas between that, those valleys and that stuff, those are high-speed avenues of approach depending on the amount of rivers, creeks, streams that are running through them. You may want to close off that entire valley. So, according to Yugoslavian Army doctrine, there was no set frontage. This minefield was put in to conform to the terrain to slow that high-speed approach by your enemy, to stop their tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, armored personnel carriers from pushing through there at high speed to get into your rear areas or to hit your strong points. Now, these minefields were typically laid 3 to 4 rows on average. Other obstacles were typically tied in with these minefields behind the minefield. So back here, closer to your position, you would have wire obstacles, dragon's teeth, hedgehogs, ditches, whatever could be put in there, whatever you had the assets to put in there. In front of the anti-tank minefield here, it was not uncommon that they were supposed to put a protective anti-personnel minefield in front of this based off Soviet doctrine. I will look for more information on that, probably get the actual Soviet guidance on those doctrine and do a video on that by itself. Now, how these minefields are set up, and I think this is pretty ingenious, actually better than U.S. doctrine. I actually think we should modify our stuff a little bit. This minefield was composed of mines that were available. Your leading rows, say your first 2 or 3, would be buried, blast activated anti-tank mines, such as your TM Alpha 1s through 5s and your TMM 1s, potentially a TMRP 6 that's set for pressure. Your rearmost row will be tilt rod mines, because if they get through here, you definitely don't want them to get past this point. So you would put in tilt rods, which make these mines a full track mine, a full a whole width mine, whatever you want to describe it, where any part of that vehicle that drives over the top will set the mine off. Where these back here, you need something going directly over the top of that pressure plate to activate that mine. These mines were spaced 4 meters apart and then the rows were spaced 20 to 4 meters apart, but their manual, their doctrine said the average was supposed to be 30 meters, but depends on terrain. You may have to move forward one of the rows just a bit because of rocks or some other unforeseen problem inside the area for that minefield. Now, how this got laid out is really interesting. First, you put in your alpha row going all the way across, 4 meters per mine. You then go to your Bravo 1, using U.S. military terminology. You always start on the right, go to left. Your Bravo 1 is 30 meters behind your alpha row, and this mine is offset by 1 meter to the right from the mine in front of it. And then 4 meters apart going all the way across. Your Charlie row, when you're at Charlie 1, you offset yourself 1 meter to the right from the Bravo 1. So you're creating a diagonal. And then standard spacing going across. Delta row, same thing. Offset by 1 meter to the right from the Charlie row. Now when you think about that, we have 4 rows offset by 1 meter each. So an enemy who's coming forward here, basically you have a straight line of mines in front of you that no matter what you do driving through there, you're going to set off one. Even if you magically somehow squeeze through up in here, you'll still hit the one on the Delta row. Taking out your vehicle, immobilizing it, depending on the type of mine, how big it is, the type of armor on your vehicle, potentially killing the crew inside or injuring them. This is ingenious. Offsetting each row by just a little bit so that if all of these were collapsed into one row, it's just a continuous line of mines going across. And there's no gap for going between it. That is completely different than the doctrine I see in NATO nations, especially with the U.S. military, where we have the mindset of it's a box. So each mine, the first mine goes down right at your Alpha 1. Your first mine goes down at your Bravo 1. First mine goes down at your Charlie 1. And then you have that set spacing to the next mine. So what you end up with in that situation, you have columns of mines going through that are straight down, which the enemy could potentially drive through and not even notice your minefield. This situation, each successive row of mines is offset just a little bit, which increases the chance that the attacker will end up driving over the tops of these mines. Now, anti-handling devices, it'd be the same as it was with other Warsaw Pact nations. It's not going to be every mine. It's going to be kind of random in there to stop the deminer, stop that enemy sapper from clearing a path through the minefield before the attack. So you're probably going to have a anti-handling device for every one, or one for every 10, or one for every 20 mines in the minefield, set at random. Common tactic that they also had in Yugoslavia that they got from the Soviets was stacking anti-tank mines. So it could potentially be some of these at random or in the spots that they think is most likely an area where the enemy might try driving through as fast as possible. You could have the anti-tank mines in that area, that particular approach lane, if you want to think of it. The mines in that approach lane could be stacked. You could have 2 mines there, one on top of the other. You could have 3 mines. You could have 4 mines. Whatever they had available, and dependent on the amount of time that they had. By doing it that way, You know, this is the most likely lane they're going to come through. When they do set off that mine, they're going to get an even larger blast than they would from just a single anti-tank mine. That larger blast could even heavily damage a tank and breach the hull. Lighter vehicles along the lines of, say, a BTR or a BMP, a 113, FV432, whatever, they would get completely shredded by stacked anti-tank mines. So this is a interesting tactic, one that I could see used by resistance organizations who are, for one reason or another, they're assisting with putting in a complex obstacle system. They're assisting with putting in a minefield. Here's a tactic here which will increase your chances of hitting the enemy and hopefully stopping them before they reach your defenses back here. And hopefully cause them a whole lot of heartache, a whole lot of hurt, bring down their combat power. Yeah, make it easier for the defender. Now, for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot and Militia movements, always remember, essayons.